Welcome, dear listeners. Today in the Spotlight, we are talking about social media and its role in society. I'm your host for today, Hamza, and today with me we have Yahya.
Hi.
Abdulwasi.
Hi.
Aliasa.
Hello.
And Daha.
Hello.
So what is social media? Social media is defined as websites and applications that enable users to create and share content or to participate in social networking. So, Daha, let's begin with you then. If I was to ask you, what would be the role of social media in society, what would you say?
Yeah, so social media's role in society nowadays obviously has a very big role for many reasons. One is, for example, WhatsApp. You can speak to people, from the opposite side of the world, whether it's family or friends. Another one is obviously keep up to date with your friends, seeing even people who you don't know, like celebrities, what they're up to, with things like Instagram. So mainly what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be targeting Instagram. I'm going to be talking about body image, right? And how it's obviously affected what people see as the perfect physique. Because back in the day, what we'd see is someone with a relatively broad chest, relatively big arms, you think that'd be a very good physique. However, now that's been completely wiped out because you've got these people on Instagram who are on supplements, quite a few of them, and all they do is they just take pictures with the best lighting, the best angle, sometimes a little bit of Photoshop, and they just post the finished product. And unfortunately, when people see that, they don't know what's gone behind it in regards to obviously the training, the hard work, even the lighting and the supplements. And quite frankly, obviously, it has ruined a lot of people's self-esteem. They don't think they look good enough. They're constantly trying to look like them. And even some of these people who do post these pictures are also selling products. Like, if you want to look like me, in 6 weeks, buy this product. And quite frankly, I think that's quite scammy. And it's not good. And it's both with men and with women. When women want that hourglass shape or whatnot, whatever they like. Supplements, because obviously just these people on social media, and I believe it's affected mental health as well. People are trying their best to try and look like these people, and I think, quite frankly, a lot of people are getting desperate as well.
Right, so Yahya, what would you say?
Yeah, I think Dar has made a good point there. I totally agree with him. I think there's no surprise, like what he said at the end, that there's a rise of mental health issues along with the rise of social media. When you see social media, it's kind of the ultimate kind of deception, where everyone just puts their life in the spotlight, you know what I mean? Not to, obviously, not, punning intended. They put their life in just that snapshot, and then they say that this is what life is. I think that's one of the biggest deceptions that we have about social media today. Because what people don't see, for example, when you have someone, let's imagine you even have someone who got a good body through naturally, right, Daha? Even if you have someone like that, he just shows you, or she just shows you their body in that image. You don't see the hard work of going 5-6 times a week to the gym. You don't see them eating healthy food. You don't see them when they had to mentally give up on that takeaway that which they wanted, or that dessert which they were going to have. So I think it's really the ultimate deception, where it just puts someone's success in one kind of moment, and it doesn't show you the true story of how actually people got to that.
Right, some very good points there. Abdulwasi, what would you say? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do agree with that, actually. Especially the point that Yahya made about the snapshot. It's very easy to just get swept away by all the glamorous life these people are leading. Okay, they got nice cars, they've got a nice body, they've got whatever they want. Okay, and you see them, and you don't just see them. You're scrolling through a feed most of the time on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. Okay, and you see loads of people having this, and you very, very quickly begin to feel like a minority because there's no one else next to you. Most of the time, you're just scrolling through yourself, and you don't have these things, and everyone else has these things. You feel a bit ostracized, you feel a bit weak, you feel a bit like you're not worth much, and that leads to what Daha was saying: mental health issues, okay, low self-esteem, and then that has real-world effects, where it affects what you behavior in school or in your workplace or whatever. It may make you, I know some girls get anemic because they want, just to be really, really thin. Okay? Most of that is photoshopped anyway. So, yeah, it's not just the snapshot of life, it's the illusion that everyone else has got a better life. Because on the internet, everything is glamorized.
So, Aliasa, what would you say then?
I think this is a quite interesting conversation because of the fact that what do we mean by society? what do we mean by social media? And what kind of is, well, the question is, what is the role of social media in society? What is social media there for? Well, social media was initially created to contact people, to have your real life contacts, real life friends in a digital format, so that, you, no matter where you were in the world, you could keep your friendships, you could keep talking to one another. And I think that in itself is a good idea. It's always good to keep contact with people. It's always good to meet people. And in a world where everything's getting closer together because of social media, you're able to stay in contact with family who may live abroad, and the only way you could meet them is travelling out in the summer, facing all those costs of flights, travel, accommodation. Okay, and suddenly now you can communicate with your family, communicate with people in another country at your fingertips, and especially in our current pandemic of the COVID virus, where we aren't allowed to go out, we aren't allowed to meet people. Social media has brought families and stuff close together. We're able to keep in contact when before we couldn't.
So, Abdulwasi, have you got a point to make in there?
So, you keep talking about being connected with family and strangers around the world, okay? But I think this is just one facet of social media that, it's got positive effects, I agree. But it is just one facet. The talking to people, okay? The chatting with people, okay? All that stuff can be just accomplished with, say, Instagram DMs or WhatsApp or whatever, okay? Instant Messenger, right? So why then, there's also, a certain facet that is, I can't see any benefit to. For example, sharing your life with people, putting all these posts on everything. People open themselves out to social media when they don't open themselves out to their closest friends or family, okay? It's this thing with the internet that is just exacerbated by social media, by clicking post, and you can just share live, okay? It's this thing where it's just removed. You click and it's on there, okay? And everyone knows everything about you. Now, this is obviously have security concerns, but more importantly, concerns about the person posting. Okay, why do they want everyone to know? It's almost like a sort of disease where they want to post everything they want because it's almost like they're bragging.
Yeah, so I completely agree with you, especially when it comes to security. That's what I was actually going to go off on. So I think due to social media, in regards to, obviously it's where it's your choice, you're not getting forced to use it. However, I think privacy is something that's missing, and it can really affect you in the long run. Like obviously times change, and whatever you say 5 years ago that would have been quite funny and no one would have cared about it, it might backfire and bite you in the back 10 years later. And there have been many examples of this.
But is that a fault of social media itself, or is that just a fault of the users who use social media? So is it kind of, is it Mark Zuckerberg's fault that people are, misusing Facebook, or is it actually the users who misuse Facebook that are the ones to blame? So it's a society issue, not a social media issue.
Mark Zuckerberg sells people's information, so I don't think we can really put him into this situation without, pointing a finger at him. So
I think, whilst you're very true on that, I agree with you. I just think Al's point is, to Daha, we'll let him respond, right, is that, okay, Zuckerberg selling your information, which is obviously a very, very bad point. But what Al is trying to say is, just that bit aside, people who do silly things, like, for example, they put a post up saying, that they don't like, Muslims or something, right? That 5 years down the line, they can get caught up on that when they go for a job interview. And so Al's saying that when Daha's making that point where people can pick you up on stuff, is that the fault of Zuckerberg? Is that the fault of Zuckerberg, or is that the fault of the user?
One thing I was going to state was, obviously, yes, it is the fault of the person. However, 10 years ago, would you say you were the same person or you thought the same way?
No, I don't think so, yeah.
And I believe, I can't, because I don't really watch it myself too much, but I remember there was a case with, I think it was I'm a Celebrity, last year or the year before, where there was a lad, I don't know his name, but when he was 16, I think he was on Facebook, he made like a homophobic remark, I believe it may have been a joke, but it was homophobic nonetheless. Obviously, 10 years ago, it was accepted. Everyone thought it was quite funny, and now obviously times have changed. Obviously, more politically correct and obviously more accepting. These types of jokes will not run, and now obviously it got him kicked off the show. And do you think it was his fault that he did something like that when he was 16? Obviously, we were all 16. Me not too long ago, to be honest, but there's many things which I know would have hurt my career.
Can I say, did he retract that statement?
I'm going to be honest, I'm not too sure. I said I don't rewatch it, but...
Yeah. Just my 2 cents. If he retracted his statement and then they still kicked him out, I would agree with you. But if he's not, retracted his statement... if he did... Before he went on that show, if he hasn't retracted that statement, I can understand why they kicked him off. That's what I'd say.
But I think that's actually a symptom of society not evolving and not understanding social media more than the social media's fault. It's not... Everyone knows that what goes on the internet stays on the internet, no matter what. Okay? And I think it's society who needs to be able to, firstly, understand that people change. Okay? Because we have a fascination with being perfect now, but holding everyone to accountable to today's standards, to right now standards. Okay? Even if that means being hypocritical to yourself. But the internet doesn't do that. The internet doesn't change the past. Okay? You can't change what you've posted. It's on there, it's there for everyone to view, and that's it. And that's something that we as a society need to be telling people and understanding as a society. And, it is well known, and anything that you post on the internet is there forever. So people should be posting and using social media in a way that reflects that.
Yeah, okay, I agree with you mostly in the fact that they should, have some second thoughts about posting this sort of thing. Some inhibitions, but you can't say that social media hasn't made provisions for them to make it so easy for them to post stuff. I can't tell you the amount of times just scrolling through Instagram and suddenly I just open the camera app, and if I click one button, I posted my face onto Instagram, right? It's really easy to post something, even accidentally, right? And then you got people who want to be known. Imagine how many things they post in a day just because it's that easy. Stories is literally made for you to share your entire life with one click. Okay, I think the social media shouldn't, people who, like CEOs who have social media, who made the social media, should have some accountability for that. Okay.
But why though? Because they're just capitalizing on what people want. People want to do that, right? So that's not a bad business model. Business is you look at what people want and you capitalize on it. So it's not, that's what businesses are there for. That's what social media is there for. If people want to do that, that's what they should be able to do.
I mean, people want the Hunger Games. Should we make the Hunger Games? I mean, just because people want it doesn't mean that we should give it to them.
Yeah, people want a zombie apocalypse, and we're not going to allow that, are we? One other thing that I would like to add is I completely agree with Abdulwasi, where obviously, and yourself as well, it's society, and I believe that social media is, one word I'll describe it, is a catalyst. All these thoughts and everything have been floating around. However, social media has, allowed everyone to just, I'm going to be honest, people shouldn't have, not saying they shouldn't be allowed to have opinions, but because of, the anonymity, I don't know how to say it, because obviously they're anonymous, let's just say they're not as genuine as they would be in real life. I think if you pulled someone up and you spoke to them face to face and you're having a conversation, I think their opinions would differ compared to if they were behind a computer screen. Okay, in front of some, and there's obviously many reasons for that. Obviously, in person you're going to be a lot nicer, and you can't say you're 6'7" when you're 5'3", and yeah, that's my point.
Right, so it just comes back then to the question: should freedom of speech on social media be limited, and to what extent?
What I'd say is, just before I come to that, I think what Al said, needs to be hammered home. Because you're making a good point, Daha, but what Al said is completely true. If you're not willing to accept what social media gives, if you as a user, and I'm just going to be honest here, this is my point. If you as a user put your life story on every single day, right, and you have these polarizing ways of doing things in your house and your general life, you are going to get criticism from a platform where it is completely free to use for 7 billion people in the world. You have to accept that. Instagram, Snapchat, all these things are not Facebook, are not things where, well, okay, Facebook might be a bit different, but they're not places where the whole point of it is for you to share it with other people. You have to take the consequences. Some people are not going to like that. And you know what? Some people in this world are really horrible. And if you don't want to listen to that, which I think is totally people's right, then you need to get off social media.
What would you say to that, Dad? Do you agree with that?
I think obviously, yeah, you do definitely make a good point. However, just in regards to obviously what Hamza was saying, in regards to obviously freedom of speech, you do have horrible people in the world. They are allowed to say whatever they want. But where do you draw the line? Okay, what are they, like, whenever you do post something on your stories or your Instagram videos, to what, how horrible are they allowed to be? There are many, like, racism, homophobia, transphobia, everyone's like that in the comments. Do you think that should slide?
No, yeah, that's a good point, yeah. So I think, just to clarify that, my position is freedom of speech should extend to the point where whatever you say, number one, it should be in an academic way or a kind of, an eloquent way. Yeah. And number two, whatever you say, it should be in a way which is not going to offend the majority of people. So, for example, let's take one of the hot topics. Yeah. For example, when there was this thing...
I'd like to repeat, let's not try and get too political in this podcast, please.
No, I'm not going to get political. It's not going to be anything about Donald Trump. Don't worry. Yeah. So, what I was saying is, in the situation in France, right, where Muslims don't understand this, is that when the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was criticised by the French, okay? If you look through the whole history of Islam, right, people have always criticised the Prophet Muhammad, but they've always done it in an academic way where they've written books, they've talked about his life, they've talked about the morals, they've talked about the way Islam developed. No one was stupid enough to draw a cartoon which they know is completely against the Islamic creed. So, I'm not talking about Islam specifically, I'm talking generally. People in the world are tolerant to freedom of speech, but there is a limit when you do something which is blatantly offensive to so many people, and there's nothing academic about the way you're doing it.
I think freedom of speech is a full topic in itself that we can discuss, but for what I think freedom of speech is kind of similar to your point, Yahya, but really it's to understand that yes, you are free to say what you want, when you want. That's your right. But you need to accept, and this is a big thing, accept the consequences that come with what you say. So if you say Mexicans are all bad people, you need to accept that the issue that comes with that Mexicans are going to be angry. And any other person who comes and thinks, well, look, what point are you making? Why are you making this point? Where's your sources coming from? Okay? And that's the big thing. Accountability when it comes to freedom of speech. In that you need to be able to understand that just because you've got the right to say what you want doesn't mean that there's no consequences at the end of it.
Okay, so we've all been talking about freedom of speech, okay? But most of these things are applied to real life freedom of speech, okay? Freedom of speech on social media, it doesn't exist, folks. Alright? When you're talking in real life, okay, that's your voice, okay? You're talking to someone else, right? You're making those sound waves that reach someone else. On social media, you're making a post that goes through Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and then that reaches other people. And if they decide they don't like what you're saying, instantly they can cut you off from maybe your followers or the world, okay? So your freedom of speech is processed. That's what it is.
Filtered.
Filtered. It's taken, okay? It's vetted, and then it's put in a way, or censored in a way that Twitter or whatever can then agree with it.
But what you need to understand is that no one's forcing you to use Twitter. No one's forcing you to use Facebook. No one's forcing you to use Instagram. If you use these websites to make your point, you are accepting that this is the platform that you're going to use. You have to abide by their rules. If you play five-a-side football, you accept. Doesn't matter if you're a professional footballer. Doesn't matter if you're an amateur footballer. You play by the rules that is decided whether you're going to be in the box, whether you can score outside the box, whether the keeper's allowed to go out. You play by the rules in the game.
I disagree with that completely. Yeah, no one's actually forcing you, but if you don't use it, you're archaic. You've gone away with the times. Okay. All these people, even Donald Trump, right? He's on Twitter, okay? Everyone's on Twitter. If you don't have a discourse on every single platform, then you're seen as you're seen as old, you're seen as a fossil, okay?
But that's, once again, that's a society problem, not a social media problem.
May I add one thing? Donald Trump's no longer on Twitter.
Not as the president.
I think you make a good point, but I think you've got to understand is Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, they've all got monopolies on this. That's the problem. So if Twitter and Facebook, so for example, they're private companies, yeah? So if they say something which is within their remit, which they don't like, that's okay, fair enough. Private companies, they can choose what they want. But the problem is they've just got a huge monopoly on that. And I think that's why Abdulwasi's got such a problem with it. Because if you're not on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, how can you get your message out there? Because if you think about it, these mainstream media outlets, they all work together. They all have the same criteria of what they'll allow and not allow. So if you say something which is against Facebook, you're damn sure that Twitter won't allow it, Instagram won't allow it, BBC News won't have you on, because they all have very similar philosophies. So I think it's one of those situations where the society, which we say, these corporations say, you can say what you want, but as long as it's what we want. So it's that kind of dilemma and that kind of paradox.
Yeah, I agree with you in that, the censoring of people is an issue, but I think that's something for a different topic, a different time to discuss. But at the end of the day, when you use these sites, you accept that this is what's going to happen. Now, whether that's a thing that we should accept and which is right or not, that's, I think, a matter for another time. But what I'm saying is that if you use these sites, you need to accept that this is what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think also this brings our back, if I refer it back to the main question, which I think is one of the main issues here, is if we see social media in society as a method of education, I think that's one of the major problems. If we saw it as a mess about, right, where people go on there, you have a laugh, you talk about funny things and funny memes and things like that, okay, who cares? But unfortunately, social media is now presidential elections. And I think that is the problem, where we have people on there who are, racist, homophobic, whatever they are, and these are the people who are allowed to comment when the president of some country or a member of parliament is trying to make a point. So I think the issue is that social media in our society, it's become all an educating point now, where people look at it and think, I want to get my news from there, I want to get the latest update, I want to know what this celebrity is doing. And I think that is one of the problems, where because social media has become such a big part of our education now for people, and because it's so turbulent and volatile, that it's just become a kind of hotbed of disaster.
Right, so I'm going to state a point which, it might sound like, I'm being hypocritical here. So we were talking about people being anonymous, and I believe that might be the main reason of why, toxicity in social media, because they have something to hide behind by. And I know, it might bypass some sort of security, but if we somehow had a system where everyone had to, post a picture of themselves, have their name and some sort of information where they actually have to be mindful of what they say as if they were in real life, then I think we might be in a much better position. Whereas, if you make an account with a Dragon Ball Z character and a name like, Mr. Brown, right? No one knows who you are. Hence, you can go however, you can be as bad as you want. Whereas if you put your name there, if you've got a picture of yourself and you've got some sort of personal detail there, I bet you £100 you're going to be a lot more mindful of what you say. And I think that'll decrease the trolls in social media.
Just to be clear, you're not saying that everyone should do this. You're just saying that if they did, they'd be a bit more mindful, like if they're talking in real life.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, okay, so we've heard some great points there. So I think we'll wrap it up there for today. So I want to thank the boys for coming out here and expressing their views. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go around and I'm just going to ask the guys just to summarise in a few sentences what they think ultimately is the role of social media in society. So we'll start with you, Yahya.
Okay, so the role of social media, I think, should be as a pleasure and a leisure of society, but unfortunately it's become a centrepiece of society where things like elections and education is now transferred, which means it's overstepped its bounds.
I think the role of social media should not be to try to inform on such a large scale or act as if, whatever you post is the be-all, end-all of one subject, but to be a catalyst for you to go out and search your own opinions and make your own opinions but unfortunately it's not risen to that role and has instead become a flash way of learning for idiots.
I think I agree with Yahya here in the fact that I think we place a very important role of social media in our society, but that's not the social media's fault, that is society's fault, and we as a society need to take a step back and actually think, is what we use social media for correct, and not try to blame social media for the failings of society, and actually try to rectify it ourselves.
I think so. Obviously, social media is great. It's good for keeping in contact with everyone. However, one thing is maybe a way of regulating what people say. Just how anonymous people can be. That's all I'm going to say. Just so they can be a bit more mindful.
Right, so thanks for that, guys. I'd like to thank the listening audience for listening to our podcast today. If you are listening on YouTube, please like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more podcasts. If you are listening on other platforms, please like and share as appropriate. I've been your host, Hamza, and I look forward to seeing you in the next podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.